Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is our another special meeting of council dedicated to our budget deliberations. Before we proceed with the agenda, I'd like to acknowledge the passing of our colleague, Deputy Warden Duncan McPhail, Mayor of West Elgin. So another sad and difficult day for Elgin County. And as you know, there's just been an outpouring of tributes because we all know Duncan was very unique. To me, there's no one who could get a point across using his unique humor and but still really make you think about something very serious. So he's definitely, to me, a true leader because he paid attention to not only what he did, but also how he did it. So the way he was decent and caring and getting things done. He won't be soon forgotten, and I think he will be missed. I don't know if anyone else wants to share a few words as well before we take a moment of silence. Deputy Mayor Widner.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've known Duncan probably for 20 years. Yeah, huge personality. Like once you knew the guy, he was just, he boomed, the voice was big and big mustache and big guy, but he always took the time, how's things going, and talked about his family and his wife. And we, this last conference we went to, we spent quite a bit of time with him, and it was very enlightening. He really enjoyed his council life, and he enjoyed his farm and his family life, and he will certainly be missed by the people out there, and he's a man gone too soon. So rest in peace.
Councillor Leach.
I've had many interactions with Duncan over the course of many years. And he was one of the individuals who planted a seed that I should consider running for council. So he was a supportive individual.
Very caring and supportive indeed. Okay, that's right. Come on. Thank you. Okay, so we'll proceed with the agenda, starting with disclosure of pecuniary interest. Seeing none, we'll move to approval of previous minutes. Allison?
That the minutes of the special meeting of the council held on March 7th, 2023 be adopted as printed and circulated.
Any errors or omissions? Good. Mover and seconder, Lewis, Cerna, all in favor? Carried. And we can jump in our perhaps final draft, final draft of the budget. Again, appreciate all the work that went into it and to get off on the right foot with a solid document, solid information that we could discuss. I think we've had very productive conversations. And so we're looking at potentially final revisions that have been consolidated in the versions that we're looking at this evening. CEO Betteridge?
Thank you, your worship. So I can summarize Treasurer Boylan's report. So it includes the requested amendments to the draft budget from our last special council meeting on March 7th. Treasurer Boylan has put through in the background of his report the summarizing those amendments. Some of them are council has spoken at length of, including the community grant approvals, Canada Day, and the desiccant unit at the EECC. There's 2 items here that are put forward with some information in this report. One is on council training and conferences. It's recommended that the budget of $10,000 be added, which would allow average cost for $2,500 for 5 council members, acknowledging that the mayor and deputy mayor are covered under the county budget for such conferences. So that would be for conference and training and such as good roads and other in-house training on selected topics. And then as well as the council chambers furniture replacements. Those are, we've separated those into 2 options, one being for just council chairs. That would be an estimated replacement or a value of $6,500. What we've also done is added, noting the state of repair of some of our council chambers tables in this room and the configuration, an additional $10,500, so a total of $17,000 would include rearrangement and new tables as shown on a schedule attached to the report. So if there's any details or questions regarding to the details of this question, Treasurer Boylan or myself or Matt might be able to answer. If there's if there's any questions pertaining to other sections of the budget as well, we'll do our best to try to answer those. But we've tried to summarize the requested amendments. The financial implications, if approved, would result in increased property taxes by 0.22%, equating to an additional tax burden of $5 on a median residential property, as well as reducing the township's capital reserve by an additional $37,000. So with that, if there's any questions or comments, we will try to answer, but there's nothing further to add.
I'll open it up for discussion, comments, questions. Counselor Wilson.
I was wondering if we got any report back as to whether any grants were applied for the Canada Day stuff.
There's no report back, but the statement from the township, or sorry, the town of Elmer is that they were not successful in obtaining any grants for the Canada Day.
That is very carefully worded.
Other comments or questions? Counselor Glinski.
Madam Mayor, on page 9 or 3 or 4, whichever way you want to look at it. I was just wondering where we get the 3.08 for impact on a 250,000 residential property of a total of 3.8%. Now, is that 3.8%? Is that levy or is that percent of the overall budget?
Director Boylan.
That is both an increase to the rates, the blended rate, so the township portion, the county portion, and the education portion, as well as an estimate of what a median property would pay in addition to the 2022 budget, since we have an assessment freeze. So it's both a rate increase and an estimate for additional property tax burden on an average residential property.
Finally. When I look at 3.16 for Malahide and excuse me, 3.76% for the county. I don't quite understand how we come up with 3.8. If we're adding those two numbers together, or are we just,
Director Boylan.
So maybe too technical of a term, but it's a weighted average, right? So the 3.16% increase pertains to 48% of the total taxes. The county's 3.76 is 42% of the total taxes. And then the province's 0% is around 10% of the total taxes. So they're not all equal increases to the overall amount that a taxpayer would pay.
Right, so we can't add the percentages. It's a percentage of a percentage that gets added. Like, and one of them being 0, then also lowers the total. Thank you for that. Other questions or comments? Deputy Mayor Widner.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to clarify, I guess the garbage levy is over and above this, correct?
The garbage levy is excluded. In a way, it's under it because the garbage levy was a 0% increase. So the total percent that percent increase that a property would pay is actually less, since part of what they pay is a garbage levy, and that increased by 0%.
Okay, but there's a charge on top of this tax for everyone.
That's correct. Yeah, there's a $50 charge. We didn't change
$50.
that from 2022 to 2023.
Yeah, just so it's clear, it's been brought up before.
Yes, and it was clear in the overall document, and these are just the changes, but yeah, it's always, you can never be too clear. Councillor Glinski.
Madam Mayor, just another quick question. I probably just lost track of it, but at one time we were talking about 2 less pickups from possible 5 to down to 3. And they're running at approximately 50,000 apiece, so there's $100,000. So I was just wondering, are those pickups still in or are they out? Because I thought they were on the way out before.
Director Sweetland.
Yes, through your worship. So in the capital budget, there are 5 pickups shown this year. 2 of them are carry forwards from last year. So there's 3 pickup replacements proposed this year that are going to be vetted through the equipment committee before any commitment takes place to dispose of any vehicles or purchase, tender any vehicles. That will come through back through council via the equipment committee before anything would happen there.
Councillor Wilson.
Through you, Madam Mayor. This is just sort of about the pickups, and maybe it's for the committee on this. But what if you could just walk into a dealership and buy a truck cheaper than what your tender prices get? What happens then? I'm just asking the question because this isn't a specialty piece of equipment. If it's a pickup truck, like I get these little email, whatever, every couple weeks. It's like, oh, here's a couple of, they over ordered on some white pickup trucks or some Tilton loads that are 5 tons or like whatever. And the prices are great. Good, but it's stuff that they're trying to get rid of too. And it's always new stuff. But you know, I realize you can't do that with a dump truck. But if you get some fee for a pickup that's, well, I'll say 70,000, and I get these things that come every few weeks, and it's like, oh, there's a truck for 55,000. Well, what can happen about that? I'm just curious.
Director
Yes.
Sweetland or Director Boylan or CEO Bedridge, but not all at once.
Thank you. I'll take the first attempt. Municipalities and under the Municipal Act are held to standards, regulations, prescribed rules, if you will, about how we purchase it for the public good. We're a public corporation. So when we do need to procure or obtain goods or services, we are to post for public tender of such goods or services. If someone doesn't respond to them, if a company or a seller or a service provider doesn't respond, they don't respond. Very good question. Treasurer Boylan, if you have anything further to add, but it sounds like something that could be provided in a follow-up informational report if we can't answer your question tonight.
Yeah, so there are guidelines, but that's not really I won't say that's not what's restricting us, but when we're making the decision to go out for tender on a truck, it's actually because we're following council's procurement policy. So any purchase over $25,000 requires a formal tendering process. So council has the ability to amend that, their procurement bylaw, which we're slated to do. It's a 5-year bylaw at this point. So according to the bylaw, we're supposed to bring it for renewal for council this year. So that's something that's been on our radar. But right now, that's the limiting factor for us when we're deciding what to tender, what we're not. So you can increase those thresholds, and then we can look at the opportunity for maybe purchasing trucks not through a formal process, but we'd have to now review the actual professional guidelines for procurement to make sure that we're not offside on some sort of rule or regulation.
Did you want to add anything, Director Sweetland?
Yes, through your worship. And then from the operational side, that's just like Director Boylan had indicated, we're following the council approved guidelines where, say, for a pickup truck, it's not a specialty piece of equipment, like you said. So we do go through the public process to allow those allow dealerships to offer up what they can. Whereas if it does allow, our procurement policy does allow specialized services where we could sole source. So on the opposite end, if there was one dealership that offered one specific product that we wanted, in that case, well, we could go specifically with that specific vehicle or that specific product or service. But in the general case of buying a general pickup, then right now we follow the policy, everything over $25,000, and it's the public tender process.
Follow up?
Sounds like we might need to think about our policy on procurement and a number of different levels.
Yeah, ultimately, of course, we want the best deal. So we've always said, again, the theme this year is refresh, reset, review, anything that hasn't been updated, and it's on the cycle, right? So there may be an opportunity to review this. Did you want to say something? Did I? Yes. Okay. I wasn't sure if I saw your hand or not. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Widner.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. To the fire chief, I've had it brought to my attention. We're looking at a truck, a $700,000 purchase, I guess. It won't be the same argument we hear every time. Why can't we keep it longer than 20 years? I guess because other people set rules that we have to follow. I know we tried this 10 years ago. I pushed back on it. We had the fire marshal here and the insurance underwriters were here, and they read us the act. If we don't keep our truck, if we keep it longer than 20 years, they can just cancel your insurance. They can do whatever the hell they want to do, which I don't think is right. And fire marshal is the same way. I don't agree with it. I'm a mechanic, but it costs us a lot of money. And I don't know, is there any municipalities fighting back on this at all, or is there?
They have actually NFPA has updated their 2024 policy coming out, and it's actually pushing it down for vehicles that get overly used. Their recommendation now is 15 years for trucks, to 5 years and 20 years total service, 15 years frontline, 5 years backup service. There is some pushback with some other cities as well, but as of now, nothing's changing at this time. So.
Councillor Cerna.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Further to Councillor Wilson's change procurement policy, a couple of things. We had a big discussion about the drag line down in Port Bruce, and I know that was expensive, very expensive. And because it's a mandated program by the conservation authorities, we can't get away from it. It just happens that Catfish Creek dumps into Port Bruce, and we have to, as a benefiting township, we have to, by law, like we're talking about, everybody else makes the rules. We've got to look after it. But as far as that goes, when Catfish Creek used to do the tendering and everything, the price was never that high. And somehow, and I don't know how we did it, but somehow Malahide took it over. And because of our procurement policy and the things we can and can't do, we ended up with a big price this year. And what I would like to see is us relinquishing that and giving it back to Catfish Creek and letting them do it, because their procurement policy was a whole lot different. And I think the last time they got a drag line was for $15,000. And this year we paid, I think, almost 100. I don't know what it was, but it was something ridiculous. So I think we should go back and like you said, look at the procurement policy and find what suits us best. That's all I can say.
Yeah, so I want to make sure that we'll stay on topic, and I think the point is made that it's worthwhile to review the procurement policy. I want to make sure we don't draw conclusions that who issued the tender influenced the results and the bids that were received. I don't think that we have evidence that would support that, so we just have to be careful. Different times, different contractors available with different machines. So yeah, I think the point is received and direction is been given to put that on the to-do list for this year. Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
I was just, I know you're trying to nip it in the bud there. I was just gonna follow up with Councillor Cerna. It's, you know, they have different procurement policies, so they can go and solicit bids. We don't do that. We post it online. That's, you know, I don't know what the fairest method of doing it is, but going out there and trying to find a long arm instead of posting it, I'd like this, but this is budget, not procurement policy.
I was
So
gonna say, we're getting a
we'll
little
get
bit
out
in
of the
the weeds
weeds.
because there's some nuances and the policies are not actually that different. And yeah, so point taken. There will be follow-up. Councillor Leach.
To your worship, what does the budget look like if we postpone the reconfiguring of council chambers and just go with the replacement of the chairs for this year and leave the reconfigure to next year? Well, I realize Councillor Cerna wouldn't be too impressed with that, but
Director Boylan.
So I went over it a bit in the capital budget presentation. The magnitude of the capital budget doesn't drive the tax rate change for 2023. We already have it's a heavy capital budget year, but we're drawing upon our reserves rather than raising the tax levy up by 10% or whatever it have to be to actually fund the capital program in a single year, right? So a cut, it would cut our capital draw by 10,500, but it's already an $800,000 draw. So it's a bit of it's a drop in a bucket. I would say it changes nothing substantially about the budget.
thank you.
Councillor Glinsky.
Just going back to our pickups, how different is the tendering as opposed to going and getting 3 estimates privately and going with the best offer that a dealership can give us? Is it not the same?
Director Boylan.
The process of going out to tender is you're entering a legal agreement that if certain bidders bid within your specifications of this legal document that you put out, you have to accept one of the bids if they're within your budget. Like you're entering into a legal agreement. It's a very formal process. Whereas the quotations, you're going out to suppliers soliciting like a quotation or whatever through an email, and then you're just picking the lowest one that meets your specification. So it's a very different process. Now we can We can do an informal process with a council approval. So maybe Matt goes out, reaches out to suppliers, gets some quotes together, and then we bring that to council for approval. Like we could do something like that. But you have to work that through your procurement policy, like different thresholds where you can do a formal tendering process, you can do a quotation process. Does council approve? Does council not approve? Those are all things that you can customize, and something we should be looking at. Is that go out to quotation, but council wants to approve the end result? Like that's something that you can dictate how that looks.
Any final comments, understanding that, so the idea is to approve the budget but it's a budget. So we understand that different recommendations either from the fleet committee, the results of different tender processes may yield slightly different numbers than what is planned in the budget, but at least the budget will be the starting point and will provide direction to staff to proceed with different projects, initiatives, capital projects, and so on. Deputy Mayor Whitner.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I would say I would approve this budget at 3.08. Our fuel is up in price, same as everybody else's, and we have to pay for it. Our insurance went up a big whack again. Same with the county. We got nailed at the county for insurance. We had our PIL issues, which we dealt with, and part of the budget got moved around to help cover that problem. And lots of extra costs. I mean, wages are up. We had extra costs for repairs, so I think that's a pretty good number. They told us today that's under inflation, isn't it? So I think it's pretty responsible. Is it? Is it okay? Thank you.
Shall we go ahead with the resolution then?
That report number FIN 23-04 titled Amendments to the 2023 Draft Budget be received, and that council approve the 2023 budget with amendments as provided in this report, and that council approve the user fee schedule for the 2023 as presented in the 2023 budget.
Mover and seconder. Whitner, Cerna, all in favor? Carried. Okay. So we'll just, as per the agenda, we'll just double check to see if there's anyone online who has joined or has submitted any comments or questions. So there are no comments being submitted or no one in attendance. So we could proceed with the confirmatory bylaw then.
That bylaw number 23-20 being a confirmatory bylaw be given first, second, and third readings and be properly signed and sealed.
Mover and seconder. Leach, Lewis, all in favor? Opposed?
That council adjourn its special meeting at 8 p.m.
Mover and seconder. Blinsky, Whitner, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Well done.